Okay, number 3. During design development, the architect should use which of the following systems for producing a pricing estimate or opinion? So first of all, let me just say, I've always found the term pricing opinion to sound kind of, I don't know, wishy-washy or something. It feels like you're trying to get out of something as opposed to saying a pricing estimate. But I have to say, it's actually a pretty good word for it. So you'll often see people, instead of saying estimate, they'll call it an opinion. And it really does actually make some sense, because calling something an estimate in the early phases of a project is kind of silly, because there's really no way that you could be accurate enough to really call it an estimate. You're really talking about an opinion that my guess is that we're going to end up around this number, right? So you'll see both terms being used, opinion and estimate. It depends on the context of the question. Okay, so let's think about this. During design development, the architect should use which of the following systems? So if we think about this sort of in the general way, the process is likely to be some preliminary work, pre-design kind of stuff. And then there's going to be SD, schematic design. There'll be design development, DD. There'll be contract documents, CDs. And then there's sort of an interesting moment where things kind of get gathered together, and there's the bidding phase. In that bidding phase, the architect actually has quite a few roles. You not only have created the CD set, but you also generally will create the bid set, which includes alternates and kind of the way that you get the information back from GCs, who are all the bidders. So there's a whole, it's not a huge amount of work, but there's quite a bit of work there for the architect, so that takes some time. And then there's a moment, again, where things change a bit, and a bidder is chosen, and now you're in, for the architect, CA, construction administration. And then after that, you have a sort of post issues, which might be commissioning or something like that. You don't always have all of these phases. You often don't have any preliminary phases or post phases, because if you're not doing lead or something that requires commissioning, there's not usually a reason to do that. But you will generally have SD, DD, CD, bid, and CA. So let's just say for a second we're looking at the SD time, the schematic design time, and we're thinking about pricing opinions at that point. Let's say you told a client, after you've done, let's say 16 hours worth of work, you've done some floor plans, a couple different options, you've done a little massing model, and you've done some elevation ideas and that kind of thing, and now you're presenting an SD set. And you tell them that along with that presentation, I think this is going to cost $1,432,952. That's ridiculous. You can't tell them that. It just doesn't make any sense, because that's way too specific of a number. And that specificity is actually problematic. You're implying that you know more than you do. If that number ended up being at 1.8 or 1.7 or 2.0 million, there is potential that you could have all kinds of problems coming back at you that were about you not being forthright with them when you said this very exact number. What's way more likely for schematic design is that you're going to use a square footage number, right? You're going to say, all right, I think this is going to be roughly $200 per square foot, and we think the building is going to be about 7,000 square feet. All right, that equals roughly 1.4 million. That's a completely reasonable way to do SD. Schematic design, you're using rounded numbers, you're taking square footages, you're sort of making really big basic assumptions based on who the client is and the work you've done previously. If you think that they have a very expensive taste, maybe it's not going to be $200, maybe it's $300 or $400 a square foot. Or maybe you know that they're going to go the cheapest they possibly can, and it's going to be $150 a square foot, or something like that, right? So it's not just a random number, it's a knowledgeable number, but it's a rounded number, right? And you're getting this sort of logical level of estimating for that phase. Well, when we get to DD, when we get to design development, Now we've done quite a bit more work. Now we have full wall sections. We have a really clear idea of what the sort of basic systems that we're talking about. You know, are we talking masonry walls? Are we talking stud walls? Or what kind of, is it concrete? Is it steel structure? Is it wood structure? So by the time you get through DD, you should have a pretty darn good sense of what's going on. So the way that you're going to do estimating at DD is actually through the Assemblies system. So A is the actual answer to this question. And the Assemblies is where you can either they have the means books or they have online versions where you say, okay, it's a 7,000 square foot building, and we know that the floor system is going to be open web joists with a steel deck and a concrete topping. We know that the roof is going to be, et cetera, et cetera. We know that the walls are going to be CMU backup wall with a brick veneer. You can start saying the idea of like big groupings of things, big groups of assemblies. So I have a wall assembly that I can use, and I can say I have X number, 14,000 linear feet of this wall type, right? And I have 3,000 or 3,500 square feet of one floor assembly type, and then a roof assembly type, and then another floor assembly type. And I can take those big groups, get a sort of generalized number for each of those assemblies, and I start to make it a much more detailed estimate, opinion, than this first one. The first one was just the 1.4. By the time I'm doing the DD, I have a whole bunch of different assemblies, and I'm adding them all together, and I eventually get to one big number. And presumably it's pretty close to the 1.4, but it's more detailed. So when we're talking about DD, it's definitely going to be an assemblies concept. So then the question is, all right, you get to CD. What sort of pricing estimate do you do for when you're at the end of the contract documents? And the answer to that one is you don't, the GC does. That's the bid. The bid is just the next pricing opinion. In this case, it becomes an actual estimate. So you do SD, you do it at DD, and then the general contractors do it at the bid, and that's how we move through that as a process. And the idea is that it gets closer and closer and closer to accurate as you move along. It should never be too far from accurate. It's just as you get more information, the number should get closer and closer, and will be more and more accurate as you go along. Everybody would love it if the answer was D, where you could just hand over the project to the GC and say, yeah, give me some estimating. And frankly, that's what construction managers are for, which is a totally different kind of contractual relationship where you bring them in early because they're kind of on the team with the owner, and that construction manager can then help out with that SD calculation, which should it be 200, should it be $220 a square foot, and they can help out with the assemblies takeoff for the design development at the end of that. So construction managers will do a lot of this stuff, but that's a different kind of contractual relationship. And then the unit pricing can mean a couple different things. Typically that actually means that's what a GC does. It goes down to all the units, but sometimes you'll see people will refer to that as unit pricing, like a classroom might be in a SD phase priced by the number of classrooms, or hotels might be priced by the number of beds, something like that. So different versions of unit pricing.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks to all of you who've tuned in. And if you'd like to attend our next a.r.e. live broadcast, visit blackspectacles.com/podcast to register. You'll have a chance to ask questions and share your answers with Mike for live feedback during the broadcast, just like today. And to learn more about our AIA a.r.e. prep curriculum, go to blackspectacles.com. We'll include a link in the show notes. And for those of you who are ready and want to go ahead and get busy preparing for the ARE, you can use a coupon, a 15% coupon off the first charge on any AIA ARE prep membership with code 52715webinar. That's 52715webinar. And that'll expire on June 15th. And of course, if you're already an AIA member, you can visit aia.org/ARE prep to get a 30% discount for the entire duration of your AIA ARE prep membership, not just the first charge. And that also expires on June 15th. And finally, please leave a comment below the video to let us know what you think and share any suggestions that you may have. I promise we'll read every word that you write and use them to tune our next episodes. So thanks for watching.